Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Tara Hanratty and I work in Office focusing on app compat. My co-presenters are Deepam Dubey from Configuration Manager and Terry Farrell, who's also from Office. We're here to talk about the new experience for Office Readiness in Configuration Manager and how you can make best use of it to evaluate your devices and upgrade to Office 365 ProPlus. With 2010 approaching end of support, this is becoming a pressing issue for a lot of enterprises, and we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to deploy with confidence. So in this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we hear from our customers and what we've done to help them address the challenges. Then we'll have a more detailed look at the readiness and pilot workflows that we've built and show you some demos of those experiences. And finally, we'll have a look at some of the extra possibilities coming with the plugin reports, as well as some upcoming features that we're thinking about for future releases. So first, I want to touch on some of the concerns that many of you may have when you're looking to upgrade to Office 365 ProPlus. There are two areas which are always raised that will be the focus of our session today. That's add-ins and macro compatibility. So for add-ins, there's always questions around whether an add-in will even work at all after moving to ProPlus. There's the question of whether a specific add-in is supported by the developer on ProPlus. And there's the issue of knowing which version of an add-in that you should be on. In terms of macros, the first thing we generally hear is it's difficult to get an audit of them in the first place. So many of our customers don't even know the scope of what they need to be worried about. Once they're identified, then you need to know whether that macro code is going to continue to run or if it's using outdated functions that might cause issues after you get to ProPlus. And then there's the question of 64-bit compatibility, as more and more companies are moving to 64-bit Office. So to just talk a little bit about some of the tools that we've already been working on to help you address the concerns. Many of you will be familiar with the Readiness Toolkit for Office add-ins and VBA. It's been in market for over 2 years now. It's trusted by a lot of enterprises to help them evaluate readiness for their business-critical add-ins and also the macros that exist in their organization. The most common feedback, though, that we hear about this is that people are having challenges at scale. So it was initially designed to do an intensive scan of a small sample of devices, but actually what we hear is some companies, they just want to scan all of their devices. And they're pushing it to its limits, basically. It's generating more data than the Excel version of the report can handle. We did add the SQL export function earlier this year, which is helping a lot. Customers are finding that's very valuable. But that gave us the inspiration to actually say, well, can we make a more integrated experience? Sorry, 1 second. And we wanted to make that even more streamlined. So we looked at a couple of potential solutions, and we decided to start a partnership with Configuration Manager. There are a few reasons behind that. We know that up to 80% of our customers are already using Config Manager to manage their devices, so it made sense to go to where you guys are. For all of you, there's no action needed other than to upgrade to 2010 to take advantage of 1910 to take advantage of the work that we've been doing here. Of the different options we looked at, we also chose Config Manager because it gave us the opportunity to give an on-premise experience. We've heard from quite a few customers that due to their particular industry or business requirements that, they're not quite ready or they may never be ready to move to a cloud or a service-based experience. And we really wanted a solution that would work for you and for organizations like yours. And finally, it lets us provide that workflow which is integrated with how devices are already being managed. This is a huge step over what we could do with the Readiness Toolkit, where we could give you a lot of information about which devices are ready to deploy. But now with this integration, you can go straight from the report to actually deploying on those devices without having to move into a different tool to do that. So what we've created in Config Manager, and the final part is going to be released this month in the 1910 release. It's an end-to-end workflow to help you evaluate your readiness and complete the first upgrade to Office 365 ProPlus. So you'll find a set of readiness reports that show you which devices are ready to deploy without any further action. There's a pilot experience that will help you identify the devices you need to get coverage for all of your add-ins and find more devices that are ready to upgrade. And there's also a set of reports which will help you remediate potential issues before you deploy and identify any health signals during pilot that you need to address before you deploy more broadly. The first part of the experience was released this year in Config Manager 1902, and we built on it significantly in 1906. So a lot of this workflow is already out there, and it's being used by our customers. It's already reached over 20,000 enterprises, and we're seeing an average of close to 60% of devices that are evaluated are already good to go. We're getting some great feedback, so you can see here some comments from customers who are already using it, and they're very excited about the results that they're getting. They're seeing that many more devices are ready to upgrade than they thought before they started the exercise. So with the 1910 release, customers will be able to use it to get right from the very first step of understanding their readiness all the way through to completing a production deployment. And Deepam will now go into a little bit more detail about how you can do that.
All right. Thank you, Tara, for that introduction there. So for all who don't know me, I am Deepam Dubey. I am part of the Microsoft Endpoint Management team. I focus majorly on Configuration Manager and Desktop Analytics. And now what we're going to go do is we will dive into some of the workflows to explain you how would your journey look like if you want to move to Office 365 ProPlus using Configuration Manager. So I actually want to do a quick show of hands to see how many of you all are actually planning to go to Office 365 ProPlus. So a lot of you people out there. All right, so you will really love this content. So while thinking about designing this experience, we wanted to make sure that we build it around some of the workflows which our IT admins or IT pros are already used to on a daily basis while they work and operate on Configuration Manager. We have made it so simple for you that there is absolutely not a lot of work there. There are just 3 simple steps to help you get going. So first of all, you need to upgrade to 1910. We always want you to be on the latest and the best so that you can explore and unbox all of the capabilities. But if you cannot, you can be on 1902 to at least get a preview of some of these features. So starting 1902, you will see some of these capabilities in Config Man. Most of you already have enabled inventory or hardware inventory in Configuration Manager, and that's all you need for this feature to work. We have specific inventory classes which are enabled by default, so there is no work there. If hardware inventory is already enabled for you, that's all it takes. So I want to call this out, that without doing anything here on your end, you're just literally upgrading to 1910. And with that, we are providing you all the add-in inventory, all the readiness information around it, and then we also help you discover your devices which might be recently using macros as well. So we give all of that information to you with just literally no work. And not only that, we also let you know which of your devices are now ready for Office Pro Plus based on all of this data and all of this intelligence. Isn't that amazing already? I hope it is, because all right, I also want to call out, and Tara actually touched base on this. This is completely on-prem, so I know there are a lot of customers who are not cloud connected today, or they're planning to go to cloud in near future, so you can certainly avail this. All right, as I called out in my earlier slide, it's now possible for you to identify your devices which have recently used macros. And now we know that a lot of you all are coming from certain backgrounds in certain industries where you rely a lot on VBA and macro files. Now with this data, you can know what is the install pattern for those macros and add-ins within your ecosystem, right? And then you can use this information to then specifically target those devices. And how can you do that? You can actually do that with Readiness Toolkit. A lot of you all probably know about it already. How many of you all have used or know about Readiness Toolkit for Office? Quite a few. So that's the incumbent tool we have had in the market for about 2 years now. It's really popular among our enterprises. What it really helps us with is it provides detailed macro evaluation by doing some code analysis. So what we have done with Readiness Toolkit now is that you can specifically run that toolkit on the devices which we have found on your enterprise to be using macros, and then you can use that information to then go and do additional scans, all right? Not only that, what we have also done is that all the scan and all the results which come out of that analysis then are automatically integrated into the console. So there is no work there for you there as well. We heard from people who were using Readiness Toolkit for Office that it's easier to go and deploy it on devices, but it's really hard for people to go and curate that data and then turn it into something actionable. So we have also taken care of that as well. I just want to call out that running toolkit, Readiness Toolkit is completely optional. If you want macro analysis, that's the only reason why you would need it. You would not need it for any of the other workflows to determine your readiness. All right. I just want to quickly summarize and talk about everything which we provide you to plan and manage your deployments. So we provide you not only add-in inventory, we also provide you adoption status for those inventories from our telemetry data. So you will now know if your add-ins are highly adopted or not, and how many of those add-ins probably need some sort of a review. And if there are any add-ins which needs review, we will also help you provide with some remediations which you can take on those add-ins. Maybe you can install an alternate version, or maybe you can also look at other options which are supported by ISVs. We also provide you macro advisories, as I said in my previous slide. So if you choose to run macro or Readiness Toolkit on your devices, you will see all of the data from that in the console as well. So you will see all of those advisories too. And thirdly, as I said, we just don't provide you data. We try to help you unblock and help you remediate and quickly unblock on your devices and assets so that you can accelerate your deployments. All right, so this is all about how to get started with the feature. How do you go about it? I want to call out that this is a preview of how it looks like in the config manager today. It's fully integrated. There is nothing needed from you mostly. Now, instead of doing demos, instead of doing slides, I actually want to do a quick demo to show you how this actually looks like. So we have spun up a demo environment for you all. So let's see some of these capabilities in action. So let's quickly switch. It's actually already switched. Thank you, Tara. So what you see here is a 1910 tenant, right? This is all test data. So this is done to make charts look pretty. Don't rely on this. First thing which I absolutely want to call out is that you should go to the administration tab and go to client settings, and under that, make sure this can be a little slow, so please bear with me. But what you actually have to do here is check on the properties and then make sure that your hardware inventory is enabled. A lot of you know about how to go about it, so I wanted to call that out because a lot of time people come back and say, hey, I don't see any data in my graphs. It's just because your hardware inventory is not enabled. So make sure that that is enabled here. Once that is enabled, the data will start flowing in, and then you can go to your software library tab and go under the Office 365 client management node. That's where all of this richness exists. So what you see here right now is the Office 365 ProPlus upgrade readiness dashboard. So let's go through this a little bit, and I'll try to explain you how to get and make use of this data. So what you can choose from this drop-down is the collection you want to get evaluation for. So these are all of your device collections. For reference, all systems is the one which is chosen here by default. So all the graphs and all the data which you will get in this experience is pivoted around the all systems device collection. Now, one important thing which I also want to call out is that you see a drop-down here for target office architecture. And with this, you can get evaluations for 32-bit and 64-bit simultaneously. Now, how many of you are excited about the 64-bit architecture or thinking about moving to 64-bit? Well, actually, that's quite a lot, because we heard from a lot of people saying, hey, I'm actually thinking about 64-bit. I have a lot of complex workloads in my organization, and I'm considering 64-bit. Now you can absolutely do that with this, and you can choose 64-bit and get evaluations for those as well. So let's now look at the graphs. The first one which you see here is the deployment graph. So what we tell you with the deployment graph is what's your currency right now for Office ProPlus. So right now, about 24% of my devices are running Office 365. So it looks like I still have a long way to go. It will quickly give you a quick glance of what's your deployment rate looking like. And then for your remaining devices, which are still running on legacy Office, this device readiness graph is going to help you with that to know more specific information. So for example, I have devices which are now ready to upgrade. So I can click on this node. And what this really will tell you is it's going to give you a list of all of the devices which are ready. You can then use this data and then look at it and understand why some of the devices are not ready. Maybe they have some compatibility issues with add-ins or macros. And so you can really use this data to decide and then see why those devices are not ready. One thing which I would recommend you to do, if you have a lot of devices which are ready, you can select these devices, and then you can add them to an existing device collection or a new device collection. And then you can do that, and then you can use native experiences of Configuration Manager to deploy that collection. So that's how you can deploy the devices. Going back, now we know that story looks perfect for ready devices, but what about needs review? Like if I have devices, how do I go about it? Like how do I unblock myself on Office add-ins and macros? So for that, you have more detailed views for add-ins and macros. So for add-ins, what we provide you is that we tell you how many unique add-ins you have installed on all of the devices which you chose in the collection above. Now you can quickly see how many of your add-ins are ready, how many of them are not ready. For example, let's click on this guy. Looks like 7 of my add-ins are ready. It gives you information about that add-in as well, like the name, the version, and the support statement around it. So this is really useful data. You can also use this to also look at some of the other assets and some of the other add-ins and why they are not ready. One more thing which we provide you over here is the support statements from the ISV. So it will really help you plan and prioritize on add-in and come up with your own validation or test strategy. So you would look at this data and you will understand why, like how many of your add-ins have a support versus how many of them don't have a support. We have also heard from a lot of you all that a lot of times you have to deal with a lot of versions for your add-ins, and we want to help with that problem. So we now provide you data about what are the top add-ins you have within your enterprise based on your version count. So it will really help you contain or merge towards one version because it's easier to manage lesser number of versions. Right? So that data is also here. If you choose to run ORT, we do provide you information for that as well. As I said before, by default, we will tell you how many of your devices have macros in it. And then if you see that you have a lot of devices which have macros in it, then you can choose to optionally run the Readiness Toolkit. And once you run it, then we bring over all of that information or all the scans which the toolkit did to the Configuration Manager, and we tell you how many of your devices are now ready versus not ready. Right? And then if you really want to know what type of code violations you have for your macros, which is coming from the scans you did, you have the macro advisory data here as well to help you with that too. All right, so it also has drill down, so it will give you that information as well.
We'll have some time for Q&A at the end.
Yes, we'll probably take more questions in the end. With that, now I'm done with the readiness workflow, and there is more stuff on pilot and health, which Shara is going to talk about. Right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Deepam. So Deepam has shown you how to identify and deploy to that first set of devices that are ready, and get a good understanding of what might need to be remediated before you go ahead. The next step then is to find out which other devices are already ready to upgrade. And there's a new report coming in 2010, I keep saying that, 1910, which will help with that. If you've already got some devices on ProPlus, it'll use their inventory information to figure out which other devices can also be upgraded. And if you turn on health logging on your ProPlus devices, it will also take that into consideration. So let me talk for a minute about the Office telemetry logging. There's been a bit of confusion about this because of the name. So the first thing I want to clarify is this is not information that is sent to Microsoft. This is purely a setting that logs telemetry information about Office on the device where it's running. So any user can turn this on at any time for their own machine to get more information about how Office is performing. And you can also then turn that on via group policy. I'm not going to go into the details here about how to do that, but there'll be a link at the end to the documentation. You'll find all the information you need in there. So what we've done with this feature is we've made it possible for Config Manager to pick up those logs from the individual devices and consolidate those to give you an overview of how Office is actually running. So if it's running successfully, or if actually there are issues happening with the add-ins and macros on those devices. So the first thing I would say is we recommend that you turn on that logging for any devices that are already on ProPlus and for any that you upgrade, whether it's via pilot or by any other means, because that will give you the best information about what's going on with those devices. And in fact, if you have a significant number of devices already on ProPlus, turning that logging on, you can probably skip piloting entirely because you'll start getting that information through. And what it will do is it will start identifying more devices that are ready to upgrade based on that health information. If you don't have the logging turned on, it'll still identify devices ready based purely on their inventory, but it won't be able to detect if there are any issues. So it can't flag that and let you know that maybe there's something you need to address before you go ahead and upgrade. And then the last big piece, obviously, is generating the pilot. So as and when you want to actually start validating in production, you can automatically generate a pilot for any collection, and that will give you full coverage of all of the add-ins seen in that collection. So rather than having to spend a lot of time managing lists of users that you want to include in a pilot, you can use this to find the set of devices that represent all of those add-ins. You can make changes to that pilot group, so if you don't want your CEO to be in that very first wave, or you want to include people that you know are going to give you some great feedback, you can absolutely make, it's very flexible to give you that, the ability to change it, but you do get that starting point at least so you're not building the group up from scratch. So once you have some devices on ProPlus at least, and you've got the telemetry logging turned on, you'll start to see health information lighting up on your dashboard. So it'll give you a summary of any potential issues that have been detected based on that information. If there's any add-ins or macros that aren't meeting the threshold that we expect for a healthy device, we'll call that out in this report. Likewise, if there are any devices that seem to be having a poor experience, we'll show you that and you'll be able to investigate. And for all of these, you'll be able to drill down and see the specific add-in or macro or device. And if there's any remediation that we can offer, we'll provide that there also. So let's go back to the demo environment and see this in action. So here you can see the place where you can generate a pilot. This will look at all of the add-ins found on devices in this collection and recommend the best subset of devices, which will give you coverage of all of those add-ins. So it's going to generate a special collection which is associated with the one that you chose in the dropdown. And you can use this button to regenerate that at any time. So for example, if you make changes to the top-level collection, you can regenerate your pilot to reflect that. Once you've done that, you'll see in this graph here how many devices were recommended, and you'll be able to drill down and make any changes that you want to that list. When you're ready to actually start the pilot then, you can click on this button here, and what it will do is it will launch the phase deployment wizard. I think most of you will be familiar with that, but basically you need to enter the pilot collection name here, the main collection here, and then set it to manual on the next step so that it doesn't just automatically continue rolling out. And that will let you start that pilot off and start getting that first set of data. Now, obviously, that's dependent on having the logging turned on. So this chart here will let you identify which devices are sending that data and which are not. And again, you can drill down into the set which aren't if you want to go and apply that group policy setting and make sure that you're getting all the information you need. Now, this next chart here is the really important part. This is, the bread and butter. This is showing you all of the devices that you now know are ready based on information about your own environment. So you saw in the readiness section that Deepam showed, the devices that are ready based on the global telemetry data, but this is looking at your actual inventory and health and using that to figure out which devices are good to go. And then you can go ahead and deploy in exactly the same way that Deepam showed you earlier. And then the last three charts here, when you have the logging turned on, any issues will start to show up there. This is a staged environment, so we've preloaded it with a lot of issues. We wouldn't expect it to look this bad in most cases. But this is just for illustration purposes. And what this will let you do is drill through and see exactly what's going on there. So for example, if I click on this section here, which shows macros with compile errors, you can see that there are 2 macro documents which are not meeting that threshold. And down here, you can see which devices have been using those macros. So you can go and look at the devices. You can target your fixes very specifically, get those devices unblocked and ready for production. So now we've seen how to run the pilot, how to deal with any issues, and Terry is going to come up and talk about some of the features we're thinking about for the future.
Hello, I'm Terry Farrell, and I'm from the Office team, modernization team in Dublin. And this has been a great partnership with the endpoint management team and Deepam in Redmond. So we're really looking forward to the 1910 release coming out and that helping to accelerate your deployments. But we don't want to stop there. So I'll cover some of the next set of features we're looking at for future releases to help you go even faster. So the first set is around completing that final mile of deployment. What you saw in the demos there was it's very easy to create a collection to deploy to, but there's still some work to apply the right settings to that. So we're looking to integrate more deeply into the new config.office.com so we can pick up and apply the right optimal settings for you, like match existing device settings. And we also want to optimize your network bandwidth by identifying the top set of languages that are used and create a smaller package with them, and then have the rest of the languages automatically fall back and install from the CDN. And we'll automatically pick the right language mix to make that happen. The next thing we want to look at then is to help with ongoing updates. So to help you give your users the kind of most productive and collaborative experience, you want to be rolling out the latest versions of Office. So we want to do that, but in a way that isn't going to impact any of your custom business processes or solutions. And some ways we can help there are first identifying the low-risk devices, the ones that aren't using any add-ins or macros, and recommend them to be updated ideally monthly, and ideally that you would set them to auto-update from the CDN so you don't have the IT overhead of managing those devices. But for the rest, we look across them and identify the kind of optimal insider audience or pilot audience to have full coverage of all of those solutions. And then as you start to do that rollout, you'll see health signals coming through for the apps, the add-ins, and the macros, helping you take any remediation that you need. And then when you get a clean bill of health, that gives you the all clear to go and deploy to the rest of the devices. Okay, so that's a kind of flavor of how we're thinking about the future of helping you get current and stay current. But you don't really need to wait for the future. One of the reasons we chose to integrate with ConfigMan is because of the custom reporting that's already there on top of your device data. And what we've done is extended that data now with that readiness information and insights and with the health information. So you can build custom reports on top of that as well. And we're looking to take advantage of that ourselves by shipping some features sooner as custom reports that you can download and use. And one of the ones that's we think is quite interesting here is an accessibility report. Office ProPlus is the best tooling for people of all abilities, and you also help you stay compliant with your legal obligations to provide people with the tooling they need to do their work. So this report here helps you prioritize your upgrades for people with accessible needs. It finds the machines that are using industry standard accessible tooling, and then shows you if ProPlus is on those devices or not. A side benefit of this, it'll show you the mix of versions of those tools, so you'll see if people are using older versions of them, and you should think about upgrading them as well first. And then from that, you can then get this device readiness report, and that's showing you which devices are already ready to upgrade with no issues, and you can from there create a collection and deploy. It's showing you the devices that aren't ready, so you can do remediation on them. And it's also showing you if you've been doing a great job on providing tools to people and letting them get their work done. Okay, so we think this is going to be fairly popular, so let us know if you want early access to that report, and we can get it to you. So that's a flavor of the areas we're exploring, and we'd love your feedback to help guide on what we do first. So back to Tara.
Thanks, Terry. So you can see from what we've shown you that the workflow supports 3 basic phases which help you deploy. Office readiness in Configuration Manager allows you to see readiness for your devices, so you can deploy to the ones that are already ready and address potential issues on the ones that aren't. When you're ready to take that next step, you can get your recommended devices for pilot and see any health issues that need remediation. And then finally, you can deploy to your production devices, and in future, you'll be able to monitor those devices as well to make sure that they're staying healthy. I know we've covered a lot of ground in this session. If you want to learn more, there are some links here in the deck, which will give you a lot more information. This is obviously going to be ready to download from the site, so don't worry too much about trying to take pictures of it. It's all going to be up on the website. That's the code that you need for the website, and there's a lot of other related sessions that might be useful, so you'll be able to download those there also and get all of that information. So again, thank you all for joining us. I hope you found this content useful. Please do fill out your evaluation. I know everybody asks that. We'd love to hear what we did well and what we could do better. If you have anything you'd like to discuss, we'll be hanging on here for a short while the next group gets set up. Also, Deepam and myself will be at booth 29 in the afternoon between about 3:15, 4:15, so feel free to come by there also and chat to us. But we have a little bit of time left. Yes, we do, for Q&A, so if there's anything that you'd like to ask now.
By the way, we have goodies for people who are going to ask them some nice questions and not hard questions, so we'll hand them out as well. All right, let's take some questions.
I have a question. We used an earlier version of not ConfigMan, but we were using the Readiness Toolkit. And one of the things that came up was some documents are stored in SharePoint or on a home drive. And we were seeing that maybe it wasn't necessarily finding those documents that had macros. Is that improved with ConfigMan?
No, we can still only access files that can be read with any user permission. So, like, the tool can't kind of access them because there's passwords or access rights to get to them. So, no, there's no improvement.
That's a little bit of a hidden problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you will get is you'll get the information about which users are actually accessing those files, right? So if they're in their most recently used files.
Which I knew that.
So you
Let's say the user only uses that document once a year.
Sure.
See, that was kind of the thing we were looking at is those hidden ones that maybe only get accessed every once in a while, so it doesn't find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, you'll need your users to give you a bit more information about that. Yeah.
Okay, but as you pilot, remember, it will, if there's any issues on those files, that will be picked up. If there's any macro errors or issues, they're picked up in the telemetry log, and you'll see that information to help you know there were problems. So it's kind of helps you as you pilot, but ahead of time, we can't read those files.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, so I've kind of got a two-part question. One, our biggest challenge is not so much with deploying Office ProPlus, but with moving our frontline workers to Office Online. Do you have any plans to implement reports that are going to help us face into some of the compatibility issues that are standing in our way of doing that?
Well, the first part is it can like by identifying those low risk devices where people aren't using any macros or add-ins, it's kind of helping you identify people who are kind of ready right away to switch to frontline and won't have any issues. For the rest, that's a bit deeper though. If you have solutions, you really have to, and people need to use them, then you need to create modern versions of those solutions. You need to create modern web add-ins and use the new Excel, Java scripting language for that. There's really no solution but to modernize those solutions. But at least we can start you off by saying, here are the users who are kind of ready already because they don't need those tools.
So I do have the Office Telemetry database and application server set up at the moment, and we're kind of churning through all of that information. Is this going to completely replace that or integrate with it? Do I need to think about retiring it?
Well, I mean, if you have that logging enabled, I would recommend that you check out these reports and see if they cover what you're looking for. I know a lot of people use the telemetry dashboard in very different ways to get different pieces of information out. So it may be that your scenario is covered off, in which case you don't need to use it anymore. But if there's, if there's a piece of information that we haven't yet brought in here, you may still need to continue using that for a while.
Okay, thank you.
My question would go into a similar direction. So we are planning to move to Office 365, and I would also like to use the Office telemetry to identify who is actually using Office, because we had some kind of like a water can approach in the past, and for like production workers and people working in logistics who might, whatever needs once a month Outlook online would be sufficient. Usually this data is coming from Office telemetry as well. Is it possible to also see it here in the reports? Or is it just focused on add-ins and macros?
Usage isn't something that we've put in there right now. It's probably something that we would consider looking at if there's a lot of demand for it, though, certainly.
Okay.
That's a good feedback. We can look into that.
This would really be helpful, because I was just also a little bit feedback on the communication, because I had exactly this question about telemetry at the booth. And the colleagues were telling me, you should go to this readiness tool. And now I know we have 60,000 seats, so it's probably not the right tool to do this. And hearing that, this is really, really cool. So if we would get this data out, would be basically also answering the question of the other colleague, who is suitable to go to an online version rather than a full Plus version.
We can add this to our roadmap. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, a quick question on, so, the readiness stuff is a ever evolving, status. You take a snap of your readiness today and that would not necessarily be it tomorrow or next week. Is there a way or a feature that you can highlight or identify newly discovered, this is a new add-in, it's not compatible, and it flags it? Because we've got to kind of build custom stuff around snapshots.
Yeah, that's more of what we're thinking of for the next wave, to find trends as you update. So this would tell you, hey, this add-in is now unhealthy and was healthy before, and so new add-ins would appear on that list if they hadn't been on a previous round of updates. But that's the kind of scenario we're thinking about.
Obviously, to some extent, though, you will get that. It's going to depend on your hardware inventory schedule, how often the actual inventory data you see is refreshed. So, if typically that's set up weekly, and somebody installs a new add-in, that's going to show up based on that schedule. So that will continue to monitor for...
Yeah, but there's no flag to say, hey, this is new, right?
Yeah, I think for some of the trends and historic data, is that what you're looking for? And I think that's some good feedback. We can think about how can we track the change of state for your devices and your Office assets.
Yeah.
We can also show them and create some visuals
Typically, the
around
guys kind of, we hand it off to a testing team and we're like, all right, test this.
Yeah.
And then next week, that picture changes. And then if there's an early warning that we could get that trending. Another thing on that is there is perhaps this machine learning capability around a probability of success. We see that this is the rate on which your add-ins are being resolved. This is the likelihood of your success for your due date or whatever that is. And then I got a final one, which I might not remember. I got your details, Tara. I'll ping you.
All right, we will be
later
at the
on.
booth, so you can swing by the booth as
All
well.
right, cool.
if there are
Thanks.
more questions.
Thank you very much.
Great session. I talked to Deepam earlier. You answered a lot of the questions that I had that I was going to have for you. 3 little ones. One, is there anything about the server OS that's going to keep us from being able to get this data? If we have tens of thousands of users on 365 running on server OS?
I do believe that we'd support that scenario, and then we can definitely work with you to see what your specific infrastructure requirements are, and then we'll see if those are addressed by the feature we have.
And then he asked me to go look. I didn't have a chance to look last night, but do you guys know for definitively if AppV plugins, like plugins are delivered to 365 through AppV if those are gathered?
I think so, but we can double check.
Yeah, so there have been a couple of challenges with AppV. So it would probably depend on your exact scenario.
Okay. And then the third one's really just a piece of feedback. We support 23 languages in a virtualized environment, so we don't know which machine's going to need which language. We can't deploy it through AppV because that's not supported by 365. And the solution, which you mentioned about having people go out to CDN, our system account doesn't have access out through the firewall, so they can't go to CDN, and users don't have admin rights. So feedback that a way that doesn't require internet access through the system account or some other way. So like integrating with SCCM, because our DPs have all the content wherever. If somehow it could reach back into SCCM to pull those, that would make our world immensely better.
Yeah, okay, let's catch up offline, and we can take
Good feedback, thanks.
some more detailed feedback on that. Thank you.
Hi, we have most of our clients already running ProPlus on 32-bit. Can we use the tool to look at the readiness for the semi-annual channel update? You know, is the telemetry being updated in the tool to, well, something was compatible in this semi-annual channel, but the next one, there's an issue with it?
Well, the state current scenarios, that's sort of what Terry was referring to in his session about the future stuff. It's not in there yet in that form, so we're, you know, the ability to kind of monitor on an ongoing basis and see the health across builds, that's something that we're looking at for future release, but it's definitely, yeah, definitely something that we want to provide.
Okay. Another thing which we're looking at doing is actually updating all of our clients to 64-bit. So we can use the tool to look at 64-bit readiness. They're currently running 32-bit.
Yeah, and to see the health as, you know, if you go with a pilot audience, to see if they're hitting any issues and track that and get remediation advice as well.
Yeah, the health stuff is actually, I'm very glad to see that in there. That's good. Just the final question. You say you need the Readiness Toolkit to monitor any issues with macros. Do we have to deploy the Readiness Toolkit to everybody, or does the tool initially kind of highlight people who are running macros so we can just target the tool at those who have macros?
Yeah, I covered that in my workflow when I was talking about that we provide you information about devices which have macro files on it. And then via SCCM, you can target specifically those devices and deploy a toolkit on that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do a wide-scale deployment, especially if you have thousands of endpoints, because we know it's not easy to scale to that.
And to be clear, you only need to do that if you're concerned about moving to ProPlus, because what that's going to be doing is it's going to be scanning all of the macro code to identify, you know, if it's using functions that aren't supported anymore, or if, you know, something has changed. So it's going to be calling out those kinds of things. If you've already got most of your devices on ProPlus, you shouldn't need to do that.
What about for health? You know, if we see that...
For health, all you need is to turn on the telemetry logging. So that's independent of the Readiness Toolkit.
And that will monitor health of macros in case they're crashing and stuff.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Mine should be quick and easy. With the readiness assessment that you're rolling out, is there anything on the roadmap for detection or utilization of data sources or ODBC connections to better understand if they're ready for 64-bit transition?
Not yet.
Not currently.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
That would be the biggest problem.
we do list the external references that are there, but they're just kind of, we don't give a judgment if they're going to work or not. We just say, here's external references.
Okay.
Investigate.
That's good. Thank you.
Is there any way for me to have an ADR for semi-annual channel that excludes teams? So when so we're on 1902, but whatever drops in January, when it's upgraded, would I be able to, with an ADR, exclude?
I believe that you can choose an ADR setting to exclude teams if you want to. I think that's a setting which is allowed now. So you should be able to do that.
So I'm not with the SCCM team for my company, but I'll make sure I look into that.
Yeah.
But if you drop up to the deployment booth, there's a few experts around who'll be able to answer that.
We have some deployment experts to probably knock that out if you want.
Okay.
More.
And then the second question, when we move from, I think, 1803 to 1808 and 1808 to 1902, we saw some people with macro issues, and I'm understanding that I don't have a clear understanding on what I should expect from the readiness tool when I'm looking at the macro readiness. Is that accurate within the date that it showed me? I think it said 11/7 was the last date it was refreshed. So would that be accurate to going to the next version?
So generally, those are best practices, and if you address those advisories and coding violations, we expect that they will continue to work fine in the next versions as well.
Yeah. About
Staying current is actually not a huge problem with Office. Like once you go through
22,000
advisories,
macros that aren't ready according to the tool. So
how many did you say?
22,000.
22,000.
That might be something that we need to actually
Look
get
at.
some more information from you about and understand, because that shouldn't be the case. So.
So where that happens, at least for us, is we just started planning out 1902 and we cleaned the ribbon. And a lot of macros reported like going to places the ribbon changed, and now the clicks don't work anymore.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Okay.
Okay. We should probably look at
We definitely
the
want to follow
environment
up
a
with
little
you on that, because that sounds like something we could add to the scanning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
bit. Thanks for the question there.
It's a real quick question on the systems that have macro advisories for which we want to run the toolkit. Data still needs to go to a share or some other SQL server. It's
Not needed. Absolutely not needed. All you need to do is run and deploy the toolkit the way you would do via a management tool, SCCM, and then everything else is just automatic.
Okay, so there's this different command line parameter.
No, it's the same way, the way you would deploy it today.
Scan.
Just deploy it the way you will do it today by using your task sequences or as an app, the way you would do it. And then after that, those scanned results would automatically be picked up.
Part of the inventory classes.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a special class for that, which does that job.
Okay.
Right. All right.
Great.
And that's the end of the show. Thank you, everyone.
How you doing?